Hello, hello. I've had some funny old technical issues that I've never had before. I have put a little notice in my Facebook group, which is probably why the technical issues occurred, because I told you I was going to do a video. If I hadn't have said, it would have all been okay. But I am going to do a video and do some bits and pieces, and then I'm going to run a kind of a mini Facebook challenge which relates to the video that I'm going to do now, and I'll also be popping a couple of freebies into the Facebook group for you to use for the challenge. So what I am going to do today is make some ephemera look original and vintage and old, and there's lots and lots of videos out there, but I've had a few ideas that I wanted to play around with. I need a few bits for the journal I'm working on now, and I needed them to be quite thin in place of some tags and things like that. So I thought I would do it as a video and also make it a bit of a challenge. Now I have so much stuff beside me here, and I'm really going to try and keep it in some kind of order. But the first thing I wanted to work on is some of these bits here. Let me just... Right. Now, I have printed some ephemera on different types of papers. I'm going to use a few different things along with this to kind of make this ephemera look kind of more genuine, if you like. But I'm going to show you what I'm working with. So the first thing is, if you are looking for some ephemera and bits and pieces to print, the Old Design Shop, Julie at the Old Design Shop, she is on Etsy and has some fantastic old ephemera on her Etsy store. And she is also on olddesignshop.com online, and she has lots of free ephemera. So go and check out her blog. It really is amazing. This stuff all comes off her blog. So I wanted to show you some of the bits and pieces that you could get and use and print and work with. So these are some of Julie. This one, as you can see, this was one of my technical issues. I did a deep clean on my printer, but for some reason it was still not printing correctly. So we've done more head cleaning and everything, and it's now printing okay. However, during this, it decided it wasn't going to work, so we had to bring the big old workforce down so I could finish printing. So that was fun, because it is the size of a house, the other printer. As you can see, this has got some lines in it as well, but it doesn't really take away too much. These ones printed a little bit better. So I have printed these onto newsprint. Have I got the book? No, I don't have the book. But newsprint is, you can buy it, I think it's C-Write. It's quite a cheap, natural looking paper. If you don't want to buy this, you could try and iron some of your Amazon packaging paper. Excuse me. Yeah, Amazon packaging paper is very similar. It has a similar feel to it, the more grey one rather than the brown one. But that's a good thing to print onto. So I've printed a couple of invoices. This one I've printed too, which, because of the lines, I'm probably not going to use that one at this point, although the invoice itself is very nice. I've printed one of Julie's checks, and I printed the check twice, and I have just cut out these bits. So if you can see, that's that bit there, and this is from here. So I've cut those out as well. So these are the first things I'm going to work on, and like I said, they're just printed on that thin newsprint paper. So this is probably, I'm going to do a quick version. You can do much more with it, but this is just for some ideas. I'm going to grab my little Tim Holtzy tool thing, but I'm also going to grab my small embroidery scissors. You need a bit of distress ink, so get out the vintage photo. So thing number one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on I'm going to work on this invoice, but no, I'm not. I'm going to work on this invoice first. I probably won't do all of these on camera because the principle for all of them is going to be pretty much the same. So I'm going to start by just distressing some of my edges. And it doesn't look like the distress tool makes much of a difference, but you can close up. Can you see? It's just given that a little bit of a distressed edge. If you don't have one of those, you can open your scissors slightly and use your scissors. Actually, this is looking pretty good. Okay. I'm also going to do another little technique on this as well. You want to be fairly gentle with this newsprint because it is a very delicate paper. So that's quite important. You don't kind of go too rough to start with. I can just change how I'm holding these scissors. Okay, now I've done this lots of times before. It's Abby's Purple Cottage Craft technique where she just snips out some areas of the paper as well. I'm just going to take a chunk out of that corner, not too straight, so we don't want it to look perfectly cut. Just going to take a few chunks out here and there. I mean, you can, like I said, you can take a lot more time over this. Okay, so you can already see that looks a little bit more distressed than it did before. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to pop this into a journal in half. So I'm going to fold it now. Okay, now I'm going to make a little tear. Let's do it at the bottom. I'm going to make a little tear up that crease and just fold my edge back a little bit so it looks more kind of realistic. Very, very simple. Okay, now I'm just going to ink. I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a crinkle. There we go. I mean, this will still work if you print it onto copier paper. If you print it onto a really obviously high quality, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on this crease, just inking around that. If you use a high quality paper, you won't get this same effect, where lots of these old invoices are actually on old, very thin kind of paper. They're not on good quality paper. Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to over ink. They've got a lovely little tear there, so I'm going to just add a bit of ink there. I'm not going to really over ink the back because this you could be written on the back. So once it's in the journal, like a tag, you'd be able to. Just going to go over the corners a little bit. There we go. I like these creases though, they're quite cool. So what I might do is just literally go round the edge of the back very, very finely. This paper doesn't tea stain brilliantly because it does really fall apart. It's very, very fine. But already that piece of ephemera looks more like a piece of old vintage. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to take one of my faux rusty paper clips, but you could use an original, that's fine. I'm going to add my paper clip to the top here. Okay, and for this one I'm going to take this piece of that check. I'm not going to do this quite to the same extent as the main invoice, but I'm going to give it a little bit of a textured edge. Maybe get rid of that corner. ink this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my really dark walnut stain, and in a few of the areas on here I'm going to make it even darker. And this is something that Michelle Scott does. I think she has a pretty cool video actually on aging ephemera. She does it on a photograph, which is really cool. Okay, and I'm just gonna, we're still waiting for this storm. We've been promised it for a couple of days now, but nothing yet. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide that, actually that paper clip slightly tight to get it under there. So let's try that now. Okay, so there is ephemera piece number 1. I love it. I think it's brilliant. Okay, for the check, I'd do exactly the same. Now, what I'm going to do to this one is, you can see it's got a stamp here. I am going to replace that with a real stamp because I just think it will make it look, oh, look at that. Perfect. I actually think that is pretty perfect. Nice and simple, very straightforward. I'm just going to give that a little bit of an ink. Let's use my absolutely giant glue stick. It's pretty fun, but I'm going to stick that down. And that automatically, because that's a real stamp, that automatically makes that look much more genuine. Very cool, I like that. So with this, I might fold it in half, shall I? Or should I leave it whole? No, I think I'm going to fold it in half. Fold that in half, and I'm just going to ink along that crease. I'm not going to ink the front and back on this bit, I'm just going to ink that crease so it looks like it's been folded for a long time. There you go. So already, again, that looks like a much more genuine piece of ephemera. So what else have I got? I have, these pieces come from the Graphics Fairy Premium. They do have some invoices, I believe, on their free blog. But these are ones, again, that I have printed on newsprint. And this one, probably I printed it a little bit big because they automatically come out full size. I didn't bother resizing anything. This is another one where you can see I had a little bit of issue with my, this one is not newsprint. Okay, so these two are on newsprint. You can see that kind of slightly off-white colour. This one, if you can't get newsprint, or if you want something much, much cheaper, this is the old-fashioned copier paper where you get the 3 layers. It's super thin. The top layer is, there we go. The top layer is much whiter than the other 2 layers. What I love about this paper is if you do something on the top, it will of course come out underneath because it's like a carbon. It's designed to go through the printer that way. But the white one prints brilliantly. The ones underneath print brilliantly too. And as long as you keep the top one on, you can actually put some marks on the paper before you put it through the printer. So I really like this stuff. This comes in a box of thousands. And like I said, each one you've got 3 sheets on. This is something that I'm going to share with you in a minute, you know, where you've got these little paper stapleless staples. But this paper is brilliant. You can get it from a copy shop. This comes from Staples. It's a massive box for I think £6-7, really, really cheap. The only problem with it is you do have to cut it down to the size that will go through your printer, because obviously this doesn't go through a normal inkjet printer at that size. So that's why this one's slightly whiter than that, but it is has a slightly different texture, but it's about the same thickness. So I'm going to pop those two over there for a moment. This is the one I'm going to work on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to distress the edges and ink it, and I'll be back because obviously you don't want to see that again. Okay, so it's quite subtle. I haven't over inked this because it's quite a light piece of ephemera, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually fold this one in 3. Like so, and then again I'm going to just run the ink along the crease, but not either side of the crease. This one's quite a delicate piece, so okay. So now I want to add to this as a way of making it look genuine, because some of the genuine pieces have things attached to them. I haven't got, well, a bit like this one that came from Julie. You can see it's got the stamp on it, and it's been signed over. So this was the kind of thing that made it genuine. So what I'm going to do is I could actually use this as a base. I think I will. You wouldn't have to, you could. This is a piece of old scrap parchment paper. So you could let's try it. Let's see if we can make this look. Okay. So actually I'm going to do that one in a minute because I want to show you, I'm going to have, yeah, no, let's do it now. Let's do it now. I will come back to that. I have a couple of new Mackie stamps, and I have to show you this. This is the new Mackie block. How awesome is that? I just can't tell you how much I am in love with this. I've got a little shelf just there, and this sits on the shelf just looking amazing. But this is fantastic. These are quite small stamps, so I'm not sure if I'm going to need it or not. Let's try. Right, let's go back to this. So I've got my little scrap piece of parchment paper looking rather tatty. I'm going to ink it anyway. Ink it some more. Probably should have made this a little bit aged first. I know I'm jumping about, but you know, I said I'd turn the camera on, and this is kind of how I work. I'm actually amazed I managed to get through a video where I actually work on one thing from start to finish, because I don't know, I procrastinate. I have a very short concentration span, a bit like a goldfish. Okay, so we have that. Now I want a bit of text on it, and I've got this teeny tiny text stamp. Can't remember exactly what it was. Can't remember. I'm going to use the walnut stain, and at the end of the day, kind of doesn't really matter what it says. Let's just pop a bit of text on there. Any text stamp would obviously do the trick. I have this one, which has some lines on, which I thought would work well for what I want to do. So I'm just going to put a little bit of ink where those lines are. I've gone to the vintage photo this time. I'm going to put that on there. Then I'm going to grab one of my stamps. I want something without a really heavy watermark on, is what I'm looking for. That red one looks quite cool. That's not got too heavy a watermark on that. that will work perfectly. So, ooh, I'm going to take my stamp, stick it down, and then this one is a little bit big actually for what I want, just bear with me. This one is from Blade Rubber. It's a Blade Rubber stamp and I just want those lines there. But this time I'm going to go for black soot, but I'm going to, let's just grab this. I'm going to do it. There we go. Look at that. So that's the third impression. From there. Just get some more of that ink off there for a minute. Okay, so let's go for that now. We have made it. We're going to attach it here. Now, what you often find is it would be glued on partially. So I'm just going to run a little bit of glue up here. And I'm using a glue stick. Okay. I'm going to use my Tim Holtz tiny attacher. Only because why not? Why not? Look at that. Perfect. Oh, it's just, I love it. I just love it. I'm going to leave it there so you can look at it and see how pretty that is. They don't all have bugs on, by the way. Mackie Stamps has several designs of these. There we go, look at that. Mackie Stamps. Love it. So, don't need those now. Let's put those over there. This is something that I'm going to be using. Do I need to use it on here or not? Actually, I don't think so. I think that's enough. I just think that makes it look a little bit more genuine. Makes it look more like a piece of real ephemera. And let's say, for example, this one. This is even thinner because this is newsprint. So I'm not even going to glue that. I'm just going to staple that. Again, that just looks great, doesn't it? Just looks so real. So yeah, there we go. That's our invoice. Love it. Love it. Very cool. Okay, show you a few more things. So this one, probably I'm not going to do anything to this now. This one is one of my own. I think pretty much everything else I'm going to show you come from my own stuff. This one it's just photocopied, and I've photocopied that onto, it's a parchment paper, and this particular parchment paper is from Paper Chase. You can get it online in the UK or in a store if you have one near you. Unfortunately, just before lockdown, our local one closed, which was a bit of a shame. But let me just show you again something I would do to make this look. Let me find something nice. Oh, blue. Maybe blue would look quite nice on here. That's a bit small, actually. Let's go for nice red. That's lovely. Okay. Whoops. The tricky, I mean, there's plenty of them about, you know, vintage stamps without much of, and it could be a modern stamp. It doesn't have to be an old one. It just needs to not be, not have too heavy a watermark. Although if you haven't got, you know, a stamp, then having one with a heavy watermark is absolutely perfect, isn't it? Let me just grab this other scrap piece of paper. There we go. So just pop that on there, and then of course I'd do my usual round the edge of that. I got it off eBay. It's onion skin paper. Somewhere in here there is actually a watermark. It's just there. I don't know if you can see it. I also purchased some modern onion skin paper that also came from the USA. It's absolutely pants. Absolutely pants. I've got something which is just as good, twice as cheap, that I'm going to show you in a minute. So this is awesome. I love this. I would probably do very little to this other than this would probably, well, it will eventually be a page in my journal, but printing onto onion skin is brilliant. You do need to leave it to dry just a few minutes. It's not, you know, it doesn't take long. The only thing I would say about this is it is super expensive, especially if you're in the UK, and I would probably have made several smaller pieces of ephemera from this one sheet rather than a huge page, or maybe a print or two per page or something like that. But I do absolutely love this if you're going to use it as a page in your journal. Now, I didn't do a very good job of this one. This is a much better and much cheaper alternative for printing general ephemera on. As you can see, it pulled it through a little bit fast, so I've only got one full page on this, but this is I mean, it's not the cheapest thing in the world at all, but it's much cheaper than onion skin, and it's cheaper than the modern onion skin. In actual fact, I would say this is virtually the same paper as the modern onion skin paper, which is what it was advertised as. And it's not really, it's just tracing paper as far as I can tell. So this is, I don't know if you can see that. This is one of my favourite things ever, the Strathmore tracing paper. 50 sheets. I'm not sure how much I paid for this, but I will try and remember to link this onto my Amazon, my link to the Amazon products I use that is on my website. So it's really now a show and tell. Okay. This is a tracing paper also, but this is the more kind of easy to get hold of. This is C-Write, and C-Write is the same brand that makes the newsprint that I buy. So this is cheaper than the Strathmore. It's the one that's very similar to a vellum, but this prints beautifully. You kind of have to leave it a little bit longer actually than the onion skin for it to dry, but as you can see, it's perfectly dry now, where this was quite wet when I first took it out of the printer. But you can tell the difference between the two types of paper, but they just you know, they print marvelously, absolutely brilliantly. Okay, what else do I have? Okay, I have this, which is again that what is it? It's the parchment paper from Paper Chase, but again, this just looks so amazing printing on here, because you get this pattern from the parchment paper onto your ephemera, and it just looks so genuine. This looks probably more genuine than printing it onto tracing paper, but the tracing paper almost looks like one of those carbon copies. So the carbon copy that the customer might have, that's how I see this. And that's one printed, the same thing. And these are two more from my own stash that I've just photocopied onto the. These again are printed onto that this, but they're printed onto the duller back pages rather than the pure white one. Okay, so on to the final thing that I want to show you and make something with. Basically, what I'm trying to say is have a go at printing ephemera onto different types of paper. You know, there's so many different options. Like I said, it's not new. Lots of people have printed lots of things on lots of stuff, but I'm just trying to encourage you guys as part of this little challenge. That's the wrong thing. I photocopied a few of my old vintage envelopes onto the thicker tracing paper, the C-Write, the stuff that looks like vellum. I'm not going to do this because I'm going to run out of time. I'm already way over what I thought I was going to be, because I thought most of it was going to be a kind of show and tell and talk and explain. What I was going to do with this is cut it out, place it over a piece of an old envelope, or an envelope that I've made to look old, or even a piece of paper, and then make an envelope out of it because it's transparent. It's on. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is I have a few vintage envelopes like these where I've been able to open them out. This is the one I'm actually going to edit to put in the group for a start, the first thing, and I have in this case also printed the back. So this is a photocopy. I'm obviously going to scan it to get it into the group. All I've done is cut it out, fold it along the lines of this envelope. Now on this particular one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off. I'm not going to put all of this in the group because you don't need the whole back half of the envelope. I'm going to do a very poor job of cutting this out quickly. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is glue that here. Okay. Now, I probably would have got my Fabri-Tac out, which is crazy really because it's sitting right there. I just want to use my big glue. Just want to use my big glue. Let me get that piece of gluey paper out of the way. Let's pop that in place. Oh, I think we might finally be getting that storm. Okay, right, now this is where I am going to wish that I'd used the Fabri-Tac because it would have been easier to fold. Just going to trim these so they're both even. And you can't see the white. I'm going to ink anyway, but it's quite nice to have them flush. Okay. So this was, it basically didn't fit in the printer that I scanned it with. So what will happen is the one that I put into the Facebook group will actually look much, much better than this because it's going to be the whole envelope, not just a, oh, here's my Fabri-Tac, look, let's use that. Let's use the Fabri-Tac. Even though this, like I said, it's not a perfect, oh no, that should be fine. Probably shouldn't have glued that little bit because it might not quite reach. I'm gonna have to take that glue off. Yeah, the one that I put in the group will be much, much better than this. Okay, now I will have removed this stamp. This stamp will not be in the group. Again, what I'll do is, it's a green stamp, so I'm going to replace it with a green stamp. And obviously it's the perfect size because it's the same kind of stamp. Okay, so now I have a pretty genuine vintage looking envelope. Okay, you can ink it, you can age it, you can, you know, like obviously a lot of these corners are quite bad condition on the real envelope, so you can give that a really good working over with your Tim Holtz tool and your corners, you know, places that would generally get torn up. No, did that one. Torn up with the envelope, and once you've got your ink on there, you know, looks pretty old. So there you go, an envelope. The final thing is I've done, this is my kit tickets. I'm not sure if it's tickets A or B. These particular ones here, I have printed onto, I just cut this page, so it was, this is a scrapbook page, you know, the really cheap scrapbooks that you can get from places like Hobbycraft. These ones I printed on to that paper, and it looks fantastic. The backs are quite nice. You could ink them, you could age them. Now, I actually made a bit of a boo-boo and printed these at 75%, so they're not full size, but I really like them. And I think the fact they're not on photo paper, the fact they've got that kind of blurry edge because the ink has bled, just makes them look more realistic. These are my favourites. These ones are amazing. They've got texture on them. The back is a little bit smoother, but you can kind of see through, which you can on some of the original tickets. I've edited all of these from the kit anyway, but this, you know, we get sometimes over here in the UK, we get photo albums or things that you might pick up on holiday where they've got this kind of handmade paper in, and some of it's kind of really thin, so it, you know, it's got that texture to it. And now I have these rather authentic looking tickets. There's just a couple of things, or one thing I wanted to show you. So when you have these, sorry, that's my mum trying to phone me. When you have these kind of tickets, you get little clip marks. So for example, so when the ticket is used, it would kind of be clipped. So you can do that easily with a hole punch, no problem whatsoever. But what I have found, which I love, is one of these paperless staplers, which does this. So for example, if you had, let's try these two pieces. If you've got these two pieces of paper and you kind of just literally punch it, you get these holes, and it kind of holds those papers together, which I thought would work perfectly on here. If you put your little bit of glue and then your little tab, your little punch, that would look more authentic possibly than the staple. But I thought this would work perfectly to make your tickets look more genuine. How about that? How cool is that? I think it's perfect. I have linked this on my website as tools that I use. I couldn't find this exact one, but I found an equivalent which does exactly the same thing. I just think it makes them look more genuine, more vintage and older. Isn't that brilliant? So again, it's just playing with things that you might have, playing with different types of paper, trying to make your ephemera look kind of more genuine. So I think that's it now. Whew, I think that's it. Lots of telling, lots of me talking to you, and I'm really sorry this was so long, but I hope you found something in there that was useful and interesting. If not, I apologise. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.